recording in the beginning of this video was all created using my current pedalboard setup. This is something that I've been working on and off for the last 6 months or so. I shared a small clip of this in one of my recent videos, and since then, a lot of you guys have been asking me what's on my board, why I'm using it, and how it's all set up. So I thought I'd do a video here and just show you guys how this is all set up. I'm gonna cover 3 things here. First, just plain and simple, what's on my board. Second, how I powered it, how it's all set up and with power-wise. That was a bit of a complicated process. And then third, why I have it set up the way I have it set up. So to get started, let's go straight into what's on my board. I have it sitting right here in front of me. So starting from the left all the way to the right, starts with a MXR talk box. Now this isn't a pedal that I would have bought myself. One of my friends in the band actually ended up buying me this so that I would learn how to use it. He wants me to do it. And so I threw it on the board here and we're gonna learn how to use it. I'm gonna make a video about that here in the future, so stay tuned for that. The second pedal I have here is the HX Stomp by Line 6. Now this is a brand new pedal to me. I'm super excited about it. I used to run the M13 by Line 6, which was about the size of this board. It was very, very big and heavy, but it had all these great sounds that I wanted, and I was really looking for something that had all those same sounds and maybe more inside of a smaller footprint, and that's what this HX Stomp does for me. The next pedal over here to the far right is my Fishman Platinum Pro EQ DI. This is specifically for my acoustic guitar. It has a boost for my guitar, a tuner. It also has a very good EQ and a compressor. It makes some nice sound for acoustic guitar when you're in a live situation. Up here to the top right, I have what we call iConnect MIDI 2+. This is not an effects pedal. This is actually just a little MIDI communicator box. I'm gonna show you guys a little bit about this here in a minute. Very, very cool. So that's my basic board setup. Next, let's talk about how I've powered this board. It was a little bit complicated. But first, before we do that, look at the build of this board. If you're gonna buy like a pre-made pedal board, it's quite expensive. And I'm kind of on a low budget, usually almost all the time. In fact, the way that I fund most of my pedals is by selling off old pedals and then putting a little bit more in. And pedal boards, as far as that goes, I've never been able to really afford one. So I've always just made them. My good friend, Peter Robbins, helped me make this board. He builds guitars. You can buy these little boxes that come with a whole bunch of power supplies on them. And they have some basic voltages and amperages for your most normal guitar pedals. The problem that I ran into is that this particular pedal and this one runs some weird amperages, and this one runs a really weird voltage. I couldn't find any of those little guitar boxes, power supply boxes, that provided all of the voltages and amperages that I needed in one thing. So if I had purchased one of them, which would have worked for maybe 2 of my pedals, I would have had to power these other ones separately, so it seemed like a kind of a waste of money in terms of buying a very expensive power supply, and it wouldn't do what I needed to do. Here, I'm gonna sit on its side for a minute so you can kind of see this. I basically just put this 2x4 in on this board so that my board will set at an angle like this. This does 2 things. It gives me room underneath the board to put all of my power supplies, and 2, it actually set my board up about an angle like this so that I can actually stomp on the pedals better. So it's actually kind of nice in that way. But the main reason for that was to give room for the power supplies. Now that I got this rolled over, you'll see I just purchased a pretty nice little power strip here. You'll notice over here on the left, I got 2 power supplies, and over here on the right, I have 2 power supplies. These things, they should make some kind of standard to make these things the same size. Every single pedal, every single company has a different size of power supply, and it is impossible to get those onto a power strip because they're so bulky and weird shaped. They'll cover up more than one outlet, and it's a pain in the butt. So what I did is I purchased these little 1-footer extension cord things, and I plugged them into those, and then I took some plastic plumber's tape and some double-sided tape. I double-sided taped these to the board here, and then I screwed them down with some plastic plumber's tape. And from there, I just plugged them in. Everything is low enough that when I flip this over, it sits down nicely and my pedal board's ready to go. So I thought that was pretty clever. It was relatively inexpensive. That's how I went about it. The power strip itself was very planned, and the little extension cords, the plumber's tape and the double-sided tape, that was actually just a trip to Home Depot and kind of walking down the aisles and going, ooh, that'll work, and oh, that'll work, and putting it together. It also worked out pretty nicely for the front of my board here, just kind of keeping my wires nice and organized. Now let's talk about why I have my board set up the way I have it set up. I had 3 goals in mind when I set up this board. The first one was that I wanted everything to be set up completely. When you're on stage and you have to wire 3 or 4 separate pedals, power and the audio side of it, that takes a lot of time. It's a lot of setup. Not to mention, if you're doing that every single gig and you're gigging a lot, you're gonna wear your pedals out a lot by just plugging things in and taking it in and out. And so having it all set up, pre-wired, makes it faster, and I think it'll probably extend the livelihood or make your pedals last longer in the long run. So that's why I put them on this board. They're all pre-wired. I can just set this down on the stage, plug my acoustic guitar in here, plug my electric guitar in here, and I'll send them out to front of house. The second goal that I had was that I wanted this to be a small enough footprint. I have these Tupperwares that I use for gigging, specifically one Tupperware. And I have all of my XLR cables, my microphone, my straps, any extra batteries, everything goes into this Tupperware. In the past, I had to carry that Tupperware plus my pedal board. And so when I designed this particular pedal board, my goal was to be able to put it inside the Tupperware so that I only have to make one trip into a building when I'm going to go perform. The third goal was to be able to run both of my guitars through this to front of house. Now I want to be a little more specific on that. And what I'm talking about is I'm actually experimenting with the idea that I don't need an amp anymore. I can just run directly into the PA, whichever PA is being provided for my gigs. This HX Stomp has a lot of amp models in it, and I've been kind of doing some research, seeing if it really does produce the same sounds as, let's say, a tube amp. And from what I can see is, yes, it's very, very close. There is a small difference, but the truth is I feel like probably in terms of an audience listening to my sound and my tone, there may be a few trained ears out in the audience that can maybe hear the difference, but most of them won't. And so I'm really hoping that I can actually produce a decent enough sound just using the HX Stomp and not have to carry an amp, which is another thing that I have to carry in and out. And amps are very heavy. So that's sort of my goal. So just kind of outlining my signal path. It's all about the signal.
Can't stop the signal now.
He's not wrong. Talking about my acoustic guitar, this signal goes like this. I plug my acoustic guitar in right here into my Fishman, and I'm using over here, there's actually an effects loop. So I'm using the out of the effects loop, and it's running over into the effects loop of the HX Stomp. So the input for my acoustic guitar into the HX Stomp is the effects loop. Really cool. You can actually route inside this a lot of different ways. It's very flexible. From there, I'm running out of the main output back into the in of the DI here, and then I come right out with an XLR cable right here at the top, and that runs to front of house. That's my acoustic setup. And with that, I basically get all the features of my Fishman. Plus I come through here and I pick up some nice reverbs or delays or anything that I want to add to that. And then it runs out to front of house. Now my electric guitar, it has a slightly different path. It's going to be over here. It plugs into the talk box here. And from the talk box, it's actually daisy chained over to the HX Stomp, the main inputs of the HX Stomp. And then it's going to hit the main output of the HX Stomp and head to front of house. There's one thing that's actually missing on my board right now, which is another DI box. I have a couple, but I wasn't happy with the size of them, so I'm going to order a different one when I can afford it. And it's going to go right here. That's going to be my DI box for the electric guitar. And that will be the complete setup. Now, I want to just tell you one little story here before I finish up. And it's this little MIDI box over here. How this kind of all plays into my pedalboard setup. So about 2 years ago, I was on stage and I was using the M13, which is a very big pedal board, and it has lots of pedals. And you're changing from song to song, you got to change all your effects to make it work for the next song. And I found myself doing this tap dance to change all the effects. And I thought to myself, gee, it'd be nice if I could automate this somehow. If there was a way to get my effects to change when I go from one song to the next. As it happens, we had been using an app with our iPads to keep track of our lyrics and our chords, which is called OnSong. Long story short, I figured out that in the back end of OnSong, you can actually put MIDI programs in there. And MIDI program language, basically what it does is it can tell other digital devices, musical digital devices, what to do. It can send commands to it. So I discovered in my M13 that I had MIDI input, so I could actually use the OnSong app. When I switch a song in the OnSong app, I could actually have it send a MIDI command to my M13, and it would switch all of the effects for me. And that was kind of a big aha moment for me. When I realized that I could do that, I went ahead and I purchased this iConnect MIDI 2 Plus, and I started using it and putting the code in the back of our songs on the OnSong app. Now, when I got this HX Stomp, that was actually sort of one of the stipulations. It had to have MIDI so that I could continue to do that. And it does. If you see this cable right here, this is actually the MIDI out. You can't really tell right now, but it actually runs over here under the board and then into the iConnect right here on the outside there. Another little cool thing here is I can actually power or charge my iPad off of this while I'm operating. So very, very cool. So ultimately, acoustic guitar goes in here, electric guitar goes in here. They both go out to front of house. They both have effects and compression when they're needed. And I also have MIDI control, which automates everything for me when I'm switching from one song to the next. And that's all ran from an application called OnSong. If you'd like any details, specific details about any of these pedals, let me know in the description. Depending on what the need is, I may just make the videos for you and answer your specific questions. I'm happy to help anywhere I can. And thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope it was helpful to see this and see how I'm operating, and hopefully it can help you get set up as well.